and the three of them embraced. The three girls skipped off, with their arms around each other, just like when they were little kids. Emelie sighed and looked back at her younger kids. "All right, anyone up for an ice cream?" Back in the terrace house on Parkwegen, everything was peaceful. Liv and Linnea had gone to visit friends. They were on summer holidays and could come and go as they pleased. In a few days' time, they were going to begin attending after-school activities for a couple of weeks before Emelie's holidays started. Sarah and Emelie were relaxing after the graduation spectacle in town. "I can't wait for the holidays to begin. This year has been a real pain at work. A lot of staff changes, and then my boss, who suddenly quit, and before we got a new one. It was a real mess," Emelie said, pouring a glass of white wine for herself and one for Sarah. They were sitting in the garden. The flower beds were overgrown, and Emelie felt guilty just looking at her neglected little lawn. She was going to deal with it, any day now. She did dream of having a green lawn, but she just didn't have the energy. Sarah stretched a little. "We decided yesterday that we are going to Italy later this summer," she said, smiling. "Christ, I wish I could afford that. But as a single mum with 3 children, there's no room for any Italian holidays. We'll have to make do with good old Sweden," Emelie said, and then added, "It's not so bad either." She could hear how jaunty and unbelievable she sounded. Of course she would rather have gone to Italy and enjoyed the sun, sea, pasta and good wines. Sarah smiled at her. "It will be brilliant. We were thinking about going back to Tuscany. We really enjoyed it last time around. By the way, have you heard anything from Usman yet?" Emelie shook her head. 3 years ago, she had come home from work and found a letter from the children's father on the kitchen table. In the letter, he explained that he was leaving them. He didn't want to pursue his life here anymore and had decided to go back to Gambia. She hadn't heard from him since, and it had turned her whole world upside down, to say the least. Taking care of 3 children by herself, dropping off and picking up at school, wiping snotty noses, and caring for scuffed knees, and a million other things, was hard. And then she also had to try to answer their questions about their father and why he wasn't around anymore. And she didn't even have a good answer for that herself. It was exhausting. "No, I don't think he is ever coming back." "You don't? But he must want to see his girls." Emelie took a sip of the dry, white wine and gave Sarah a sceptical look. "If he could take off 3 years ago and not have been in touch since, I reckon he's just not that interested." Sarah sighed. "Men can be such pigs, no matter what continent they are from," she said, stroking Emelie's arm. They sat in the garden for a while longer, staring at the overgrown garden and the brownish-yellow lawn, and they concluded that life went on, the kids got bigger, and that things were awfully complicated, but manageable. "Is it a relief, not having to host the graduation party?" Sarah asked. "A bit of both. Of course, I'm a bit sad that Lynn can't have a party at her own house, but it wouldn't have been much of a party. You, me, Liv, Linnea, and their maternal grandparents. That's what happens when half your family lives in Gambia and the other half is rather small to begin with." Sarah looked over the fence where the neighbour was hunched over his new robot lawnmower. He was holding the manual in one hand while scratching his balding grey head with the other. She shook her head. "Little boys, little toys, big boys, big toys. But speaking of a small family, was it boring being an only child?" "Are you kidding? That's the reason why I wanted lots of kids."